Hello, everybody, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are on your own screen together with us. We are lucky. We have today Graham Robson as our expert and guest, and I would like to briefly introduce him. Welcome, Graham, to our today's CRMKonvo, and you have an impressive journey which spans from electronics to commercial management, IT project management, and business analysis. With a foot in both the business and IT worlds, you founded Cloudset in 2002, blending the diverse skills to revolutionize web applications implementation. You redesigned with your team the approach to the cloud and SaaS requirements adapted to industries and the special needs of those industries, specifically financial sector, retail, telecommunications, and government, with the skills in strategy, governance, business analysis, systems architecture, and more. Now, join us if we deep dive into your insights and what you have learned so far and what you plan for the future. Welcome, Graham.
Thank you, Ralph. It's a pleasure to be here and be part of this community. So thank you.
What did Ralph forget in this intro?
So I'm the founder here at Cloudset and the de facto kind of product manager. So it's kind of product led kind of company within here. So I'm not an engineer. I'm a generalist. So I have a foot in both camps. So we've been wrangling Zendesk now for 15 odd years. So we've seen it.
So you are more or less a universal, knowledgeable chap, like helping me with my Swiss Army knife. And instead of that, you only have one set of tools, you have plenty of skill in all these areas.
Absolutely. You could say that I know very little about a lot.
Ouch. Ouch. The usual response to that one is that makes you dangerous because you just know enough to break things, which I doubt.
Yeah.
Which I doubt. What is Cloudset about? So, okay, you are saying you are about Zendesk?
Yeah. We build like an enterprise level on top of Zendesk. So a SaaS company will, as a product, will try and meet 80% of clients' needs, and so there's a lot of extra capability that needs to be kind of added. So we kind of fill the space between Cloudset or building on top of Zendesk allows us to compete with platforms like Salesforce, who have a lot more kind of technical sort of depth within there. So we work around in the kind of workflow type of space, and our big kind of approach to life is around about the notion that really people do not systemize their processes enough, within the platforms. So that can take the form of guiding agents to pick the right kind of fields, to workflows that guide them through the life cycle of ticket, or a very advanced SLA management that's going to put performance targets against specific aspects of the process. So it's all really about process embedment inside of customer service, employee service.
Now that you mentioned the big gorilla that does more than customer service, with Zendesk focusing on customer service, you are mainly considering or looking at customer service processes.
Yes, absolutely. Customer service is sort of both the CX part of it, but within that, you've got employee services that have some specific kind of functions that exist with that area. Such as onboarding and offboarding employees, HR type of ones, or ITSM sort of based, handling of tickets that are more technical.
That you are in onboarding involved as well, because I feel in the process of getting things done and getting a new process running and to do some proper change management, the onboarding process is often too short or even completely neglected. So that's
absolutely, yeah. I mean, customers have always got choices, and some choices are, HR platforms, Workday or HRSM systems. What you find is they're very good as systems of record for compliance basis and isolating, that kind of employee information, but they're literally almost like checklists for onboarding. Very lightweight. And so there's opportunity really to do that job. So instead of going to a dedicated workflow platform, which is just like another SaaS application you have to have, is looking at your actual customer, support CRM type systems and saying what more value can I get out of that platform? Because I've already got that platform, and we can extend that to have much more richer processes, because CX platforms are very good at communication, multi-channels. You're trying to onboard your Gen Z, new employees into your big accounting firm, but they want to communicate over messaging, SMS messages. You've got that fantastic communications platform there, all the plumbing to have conversations wherever they happen to happen. But what you need is the process embedded to actually be able to efficiently go through that through those steps.
So now you mentioned CX platform, which is a word that is fuzzy at best. So if I'm looking at, let me put a bunch of vendors, Sugar, SAP, Salesforce, Zendesk, Freshworks, just those 5, or Adobe, they all have their own definition of CX platform. What is yours?
It's actually a subject that niggles me quite a lot, because CX ultimately is a whole company endeavor. If you have the customer support reacting to a bad piece of service delivery, then there's something wrong with service delivery. That needs redesigning. That's part of the customer experience. And ultimately, if it's a product, and is that product badly designed, then you go back down to the product department. So if you think about, well, if it's to do with service delivery, like a food delivery Deliveroo type organization, or Just Eat, then there's a mixture there of other service providers delivering. There's a lot of ops coordination. So that might come under the COO, because he's got customer support and they've got the operational side. But when you then expand that to the design of products as well, and ultimately then it's the CEO that's sitting over all of that and responsible for CX. And you could also ultimately argue that the ultimate arbitrator is the customer, because they're the one that is having the experience, or not. So
in fact, that's my argumentation.
But a lot of platforms are taking on the CX, yet they're not responsible for all of the other parts of the business. So I wish they'd just call it customer support or customer service, but it's not. It's not necessarily trendy to kind of downplay that that part of it.
I love to jump back to, as we touched, the employee driven onboarding. We touched the CX topic, and you're focusing on customer service. So what are, from your perspective, the biggest challenges when it comes to customer service these days?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of need for speed. There's a lot of, and these are not new things that people are saying. It's speed. It's about personalization. Can you scale that? Taking it on, but I think the biggest part of what's going on in this sort of space is trust.
Ha.
is that trust is something that AI is having some issues with, because people are people. People like speaking to people, and that is where a person, they don't even have to be right, but people will trust another person more than they will. Well, I was interviewing a CX leader the other week, and they were talking about their implementation of AI, and they said, well, I said to them, what's one of your biggest problems? And it's getting he said it's getting our customers to actually believe that the bot was right. There's almost that kind of perception that they've read the stories about hallucination, and they're not too sure whether that's the right answer or not. So I think to me it boils down to using, if you can use a bot to triage a ticket quickly and easily, and then present that context to a human agent, then you're getting the right combinations. But it can be in especially in B2C type of relationships, it's quite an emotional experience. Humans are good at picking up those kind of cues. I think AI will get better at that part of it, but I think still humans still got that kind of edge with it. And there's a lot of concern from from vendors about brand damage and compliance risk, and getting things actually wrong in that kind of process.
That's one of my pet peeves. So why does it matter whether the machine gets it wrong or the wetware, the human?
Perception is everything.
Well,
being right's got nothing to do with it.
Well, no. Well, if you give the wrong answer, or even a legal, you said liability. If a customer service response causes a legal liability, where does it matter whether the machine gave it or Thomas the wrong answer? Why does it matter?
Yeah, it might not. I mean, you got the same kind of argument happens with self-driving cars. Ultimately, whoops, who's the insurance company going to pay out to? Is it something that that ultimately the supplier of the vehicle is going to be responsible for or not?
Yeah, it should be actually, if it's fully self-driving. Hence, they don't dub it as fully self-driving, with the exception of some jerks who do not deliver fully self-driving.
Yeah.
And suffered a 15% loss of their wealth yesterday. Not to name anybody. But what you didn't mention is actually, how about accuracy of the response, timeliness of the response?
Yes.
So I mean, if I have a customer, if I have a service incident, I want to know it, or I want to get the response now, right now. And for whatever reason, we are humans, we need some sleep, and often you do see, we are not back, we are not in office right now, come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, how does that jibe in
well, I think there are some kind of processes that have traditionally been quite complex. If you've got to go away and dive into other systems to find out status of something, and you've got to go away and talk to somebody about something, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and you need to find an answer, then actually having an experience where you can go on and AI is able to understand what you want, go away and find the information and do the action, that's really impressive. But you'll see those kind of demonstrations going on, and they are genuinely impressive, but they don't apply to every process. It's be careful not to drink too much of the Kool-Aid and believe it applies to everything. So it's in the right places, it can work extremely well.
What are the right places?
Well, I say there are certain processes where if the knowledge can be codified and the data sources can be correlated, then that is a reasonable use. Or if something is thought of as being like needing some level of authority to do something. So if refunds can be delegated under certain criteria, less than $20, then it's easy enough just to get that refunded than it is to involve other people in that and extended timescales. Yeah, there's an opportunity to actually address that quickly and efficiently.
So that suggests that one of the other core problems that we didn't mention yet is actually siloed knowledge.
Yes.
So how to overcome that? How do you suggest your customers to overcome this?
Well, it goes to the same problem as we're involved not directly in implementing AI, although we are looking to use it in some areas. Is codifying that knowledge is the challenge. So there are kind of two sort of flavors of using AI. One is I use an old term called ticket deflection, which used to mean knowledge articles and FAQ. That's how it was used to be kind of referred to, but it is still ticket deflection in the sense that it's not one where an agent has to look at it and go by. So that's all that kind of, can you codify the knowledge enough to be able to deliver those kind of bot experiences? And the other type is more the agent assistance, where you're using Copilot AI to help guide agents with dealing with more complex kind of solutions. But what they're doing is they're sitting on top of or using not only just general information, but also the knowledge base itself. And you've got to write procedures. You can write them in you don't have to draw the diagrams or anything. You have to write them down as a set of procedures. But it's only as good as those procedures. If those are wrong, then you're going to get the wrong level of guidance from it. So, to me, it's the source is the commitment to being able to kind of codify that knowledge and find it in a way that however you deliver that knowledge, it's the right knowledge. That's the big challenge.
Yeah. From a codification point of view, from a process point of view, also. The processing point of view, what differences do you see between B2C, B2B, B2B, B2C, B2B2C, or government G2C, government to person?
Yeah.
What do your customers see there and ask?
Yeah, I mean they do. They are different. I mean, as a generalization, then B2C is higher volume, lower complexity. I've been sent the wrong color, shoes or whatever. It's voluminous, but it's not particularly complex. But a B2B, the volume generally less, but there's more complexity involved in trying to resolve that that part of it. And of course, B2B to C has that mixture of both. It's got to be able to kind of deal with. So if you take an example like Trustpilot or Shopify or whatever, is that you've got a network, you're dealing with business to business type of sort this thing out technically, and at the other end you're trying to then resolve a conversation with B2C who is suffering from that problem. So you've got potentially twice the trouble in trying to bring that conversation together. So it's holding a three-way conversation quite often, and how do you do that efficiently is the challenge.
How do you do it efficiently then?
It is a question of of trying to the way we do it is thinking about whether we have a single ticket and we have a way of being able to share that single ticket in such a way that there is isolation between the conversations. And you can do that things like side conversations or whatever. Otherwise, you then look at splitting that up so that you have a kind of a master ticket and a child ticket, and you have separate conversations, which you get greater isolation. But then again, you've then got to synchronize the conversations, synchronize the data between the two. So you take a classic kind of onboarding scenario where part of the process says, right, we need to agree what the start date is. And then that goes off to procurement to get the computer and the desk and the phone and the car. And then, the start date changes. And you've got all these actions on separate tickets. And you've got to then let everybody else know that the date has changed. And you've got to do that efficiently. And so that's really part of what we do is to make sure that all happens.
So this sounds like many businesses still struggle with the basics. And the basics of customer service means getting the right information at the right place to the right person, the agent, and enable the agent, or if it's self-service, the customer to fix their thing right away. So this also sounds like this is not really automatable, which brings us back to the topic du jour, which is AI, or especially generative AI. If you can't automate it, you can't put an agent on top of it. So why is it then that there is so much hype around this topic? Why is it that a Zendesk says that, hey, we can automate 80% of all customer service interactions, and by the way, there will be five times more in just a few years?
Well, the thing is that they're not wrong. That is attainable. You can do that for the right kind of processes. For some industries, that is totally attainable. And they're within that. But for other industries, and I've heard Zendesk CTOs say this in public, in their conference, etc., is that for some industries, 30% you're doing really well. You've made a big dent in doing that, and that's perfectly attainable. But what that means is that on average, 50% still need to be done by by humans within there, and they're going to get the more complex things to do. So all the same old problems still have to be solved. AI is not the universal panacea that is just going to keep marching on. It's going to need, a sort of law of diminishing returns. It will get better and better, but I still fundamentally believe that you will need humans in order to do that.
Which is not in dispute here. So, which industries do you see that are that have a particularly low chance of automating service tickets away?
Well, I mean, some of the traditional kind of IT kind of service desks, where there are complex information that needs to be clarified. So context is everything. We do a lot of work to build structured contexts for customers, so that they're collecting valid data. So they really understand what the context is, and to a lot of extent, then we work in the help desk space, and a lot of our customers run help desks, and they are not very good at specifying what their issues are. And these are support professionals, so it is quite an interesting kind of situation, but. being able to ask the right questions is important within that that part of it. So where there is a complex context that needs to be built and understood, then I think that is something that AI can kind of help with some of that, but that's really where the humans can make a big difference.
And well, IT service management is one. Which other industries do you see? I mean, in IT service management, I can also see bunches of same old, like, oh, my password, I forgot my password, which has been automated.
Well, I mean, the some of the interesting ones are, in the financial sector, you've got processes that can be automated, quite a lot. There's the know your customer financial services processes that when they get into dealing with kind of more high net worth individuals, then there's a more stringent set of criteria that has to be gone through to make sure that protecting against kind of money laundering type of scenarios. Some of those processes are quite complex. You need a lot of kind of cross-referencing.
Are these? No, this is pure curiosity. Are these complex by law or by interpretation of law?
Well, they're quite complex by law. Banking regulation sort of services are really quite strict, and the fines can be astronomical. And if you're a financial organization that is operating in 36 different territories with variants of all those different territories, trying to keep on top of those and how those regulations change is a massive undertaking.
Okay, so the complexity lies in the differences between those different regulations that all need to be adhered to at the same time.
Yeah, but even we have some clients in the telecoms sort of space, and the provisioning of telecom services in different regions all vary slightly, and you may be having to go to 2 or 3 different parties, if you're in one particular country compared to another one, and actually knowing that information is it can be quite complex.
The madness you find also in accounting systems, which have to be in 25 to 31 languages and following the regulations of the specific countries and their needs.
So we had a client in the energy sector, and we were involved with quite stringent SLA service level agreements about the strict amount of time needed for different steps in the process. And if the organization didn't meet within those time criteria, then it would then be referred to the regulator, and the regulator would apply in effect a fine that wasn't a huge amount of fine, but it represented almost the entire profit margin for that account. Because a lot of organizations work on the basis of quite fine margins. They're not making a lot. They have a lot of customers, but they're not making very much. But you get a regulated industry, then it really starts to cost them money if they don't get their processes right.
Which, of course, their owners don't want to.
No. Well, the good thing is the finance people don't like that, so you can you can approach them on the rationale of compliance office, but you can also talk to the financial director and put the case to that as well.
Looking at service processes, or back to service processes, I mean, you're doing process automation essentially.
Yeah.
Where do you suggest them to start, your customers? So they have this platform software, then they engage you to make it better, to help them automate stuff in quotes. So
Yeah.
where do you suggest them to start? What is a good strategy for your customers, or what are good strategies for your customers? What are no-nos?
Well, I think we have a sort of device that kind of helps with that to some extent, which is a process maturity model. So that we can ask them a series of kind of questions of related to how they implement processes and what kind of management support, maturity and understanding of this exists. So it's kind of multi-dimensional, and then from that we can basically establish whether they're a fairly low maturity organization or medium or quite advanced, and what they need is the kind of polish to go a part of that. So dealing with customers that are quite low in their maturity, then we'd probably get them to think about the data that is pertinent and needs to be collected. What are the data points? This is where this kind of classification, build the context of the ticket is involved with, because some of the things you can do is with conditional display of the next question. It's a micro process. It's getting people to think about, decomposing a problem down into something, more specific, and that's like a mini process in itself. So if we can get clients doing that, they are in effect following a process. And then after that, then it's all right. It's about actually looking at the types of jobs that need to be done and thinking about breaking down the life cycle of the ticket as a complete life cycle. So thinking about activity 1, activity 2, activity 3, and then within activities, basically is what needs to be done, and then you decompose that into the hows, the tasks. How do you complete that activity? We have a no-code modeling environment, so it's something that you can use at the business level, as opposed to traditional kind of let's collect the requirements, go away and build something and come back. It means you have a very iterative environment, and it's quite interesting is that people can think that they understand what their process is, but as soon as they try and codify it and they work through, in effect, testing it and seeing whether it works, then actually, no, the world doesn't work like that. Either you need to change your process or you will need to get on board with that, because otherwise it's just tacit knowledge. And this is where you don't get the consistency. And this is where you take 6 months to onboard a new agent, because somehow they've got to acquire knowledge. It may then involve pulling in subject matter experts who are tied up for 2 weeks doing induction for a new agent. Whereas if you codify your process, then you can get agents up to speed in days, because the process is explicit. So once we can get people thinking about the whole life cycle, and working in an environment that allows them to change that quickly and evolve to business change and agility, then we then look at measurement. Then after that, you've got something to measure against that process. And that then leads to finding out where your issues are and where your bottlenecks are. So it's that sort of thinking about what's appropriate to the organization for where it is, and then progressing them up that scale.
And where do you see on which maturity level do you see the majority of your customers?
Um, not as mature as we'd like it to be. I know that that's our business to help them get to that point, but we have had some. I know you guys are, from the DACH region, but what we do find is that Northern Europeans are actually really quite up with their processes. We had I think it was an Austrian e-energy company, and our product's available on a marketplace. So it can be done as a complete self-install and setup. We saw them take out the trial and then came back the next day, and they just completely configured half a dozen processes and went, wow, that's impressive.
Wow.
It's because they were very process orientated, and they had all the diagrams, and they understand the concepts, and they'd used modeling tools before, and they didn't really ask any questions or anything at all. They're a rarity, but it can be done.
Okay.
If the organization is process orientated and they just needed the device in order to do it. Other organizations, then they need a lot of help. Large enterprises can be a challenge because it's not worth my job. I don't need to put my neck on the line in order to do something. Then I bring in the consultants to do that, and I will share the success, but I'm not really going to put myself on the line for doing that. Maybe a bit cynical, but that's how big organizations work at times.
So why, looking at that, so one of the misconceptions that clients have about themselves is that they probably seem to feel a bit better than they are. And a bit more technically, what common misconceptions do you see when engaging with a client? So which worldviews do you need to probably rectify?
That's a good question. I think it does vary, as I say, in terms of some of the process maturity within here. Is as I think I mentioned before, we just run a series of interviews around a topic area of agent efficiency. And one of the questions I ask is where does it sit in your priorities list of agent efficiencies? And quite often it can struggle to get in the top 5, the top 3. I only ever had one person say it's my top priority.
Wow.
Agent efficiency,
yeah. Because there's some other fire or some other issue that's got to be kind of dealt with, and you think, well, that's a challenge.
What on ROI of that technology do they, if they are process oriented and analyze their cost efficiency or their process benefits to their users and customers, do they compare it to the utilization aspect of when they utilize AI in these process to enhance wherever they want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think one response to that kind of question, because I asked the same sort of questions of them, was one response I got was that if we're making kind of incremental improvements of 10-15% a year, then that's kind of showing some willing and showing some going in the right direction. But there's quite often bigger fires to put out. Ironically, there are situations where there are acquisitions and mergers. So this is where tech comes in again, and I'm spending lots of time, integrating things, people, and systems, and having rapid growth. That's just taking the bandwidth out of available time to make these kind of improvements. But I think there's some aspects to it, which is agent efficiency sometimes gives the impression that we're all about efficiency, and not about customer care. And that's not really the case, There's a twin system between efficiency and effectiveness, and they both intertwine together.
I see.
Well, you can be highly efficient in being ineffective. Yep.
Yeah. So I think it's about for one of the things I attempt to do is elevate the topic of efficiency and try and get it higher up the agenda within there. Some really good sort of feedback we're getting about AI is that if they can say that, I mean, I think getting to 50% is a more realistic overall target. With that is organizations are under pressure, like that time 5 scaler, that there's going to be more work. So really the what they're trying to do is to make sure they can scale the organization, but not necessarily take on more people. But they also want to do a better job of when they are spending time with clients. I sometimes explain it in terms of like the Goldilocks region, is that you don't want to be in a situation where you're so efficiently driven that you're trying to force the organization to get through tickets and put pressure under agents. It's just about volume and measuring, standard sort of stats in terms of, efficiency. But at the same time, you don't want to over-service a customer. But what they want to do is try and take some of that dividend of time they get back to actually do some personalization. I was talking to a big customer in sort of premium audio sector. And they get their agents to kind of engage with their customers and talk about music. So that there's a human connection in that time. So efficiency isn't about, can I get through this ticket in 10 minutes? Or 3 minutes, or wherever it happens to be. It's kind of somewhere in the middle where you're making that connection within it. So that's, I think AI can help sort of take some of the, the grunt work and the easy stuff. And they're looking to sort of not cut down people, but actually just give them a little bit more space. And allow agents to be human beings in that process. So there's a lot of positive things to say about it.
Now that we have efficiency, this is close to KPI, which is a funny topic in itself. So we have things like first call resolution, we have things like NPS, CustSet, customer satisfaction, customer effort scores, and let's call them empathy scores. So which are the ones that you suggest your clients to observe, to follow?
Well, I mean, I think first customer resolution is still pretty is a pretty good sort of target to look at in terms of across all parts of it. But I think you touched on it there, is that kind of testing the kind of automation, aspects of that, how many escalations that are actually needed within it. But I think the main part of it really is that kind of trust perception. How are you going to measure that kind of trust and that sentiment? So there's a lot of AI can be used to analyze both voice and textual, whether it's emails or messaging, etc. So there's a lot of analytics that can be applied to that. And I know that companies like Zendesk and others are moving towards away from spot QA checking to 100% checking with AI, and that's quite impressive in terms of really getting the kind of stats behind that. But again, it's going to be as good as the models work on it. But there is some step changes in measurement happening, for definite.
When you're saying trust, do you mean brand trust or trust into the specific answer that I get?
Well, I mean, it's to your point. There is your immediate experience is the trust in how it affects you, but that should be an echo of the overall brand promise that is being made. Does that actually kind of line up?
I mean, the trust in the brand obviously has hit, well, has got a hit because I need some service for something that when I purchased it, I actually expected to work and it didn't. So
Yeah.
best case, I didn't understand the documentation, or best case, I didn't even read it.
Yeah.
Second, I didn't understand the documentation. Third case, it just was something that's plainly broken. So
It's tough.
You justifiably say it's difficult to measure this, but how would you do this? Especially in the service scenario, and how would you regain? How can a brand regain that lost trust or even increase it?
Yeah, I mean that's like a whole company experience, though. In terms of setting the brand, setting the overall experience at a kind of a big macro level. But you've got all these micro kind of opportunities to reinforce your brand within there. I think it kind of references back into what I was saying about trying to measure the sentiment. But one of the things that we do as part of our recommendations around classifying the ticket is to try and look at the outcome and assess that outcome. Was it something that we were able to kind of identify? Was it satisfactory to the customer? Or is it one where we're going to have to assume it because, there's a lot of people out there. As soon as they get their answer, they're off. They're not going to have, extended conversations to you. You don't know, so it's quite often it's an assumed answer. But if you can start collecting those and tagging those in terms of these are assumed answers, then you've got something to analyze and say, are there any common factors in this one? Are there common customers? Is it specific to this type of customer where we can't get this kind of feedback? But if you don't start actually trying to sort of put a few clues in there in the data, then you've got nothing to analyze. It's just perception.
How can those clues get in there? Especially in the scenario, I'll ask my question or type my question. There is a response that comes back from the system, whether this is coming via some automation or via Ralph as the customer service agent. And then as it is a chat scenario, I hit the X and go on. So what do you suggest your customers doing so that they get this data that they then can analyze, even in a scenario like this?
Well, I mean, our first, believe it or not, our first objective is to make sure that the agent is guided to ask the question and have the consistency in order to be able to do that. So that's kind of one of the things we can proactively, because we can still control that. Controlling the actual, end customer, trying to get them to respond to things is a series of potential kind of follow-ups, which you can automate. There's plenty. All the systems will have automations that allow you to kind of nudge that customer and moving it forward, and you can progress your language to that. And sometimes that we might have something that the script that says, sorry, haven't heard from you. I'm going to be bold here and assume that you're all okay, but let me know otherwise. Yeah. So you're trying to tie up the conversation as an assumed sort of close, but you allow the language allows you that customer to re-engage if they need to in such a way. So language can play a big part in this.
Okay, which is an interesting point, because I mean, this is an after the fact conversation then, yeah. So a follow up, So which is, well, you could also do an NPS or a CSAT. So just give me 1 through 5 stars as an email.
Oh, absolutely,
Which is, well, if I follow news and media and comments on wherever, on LinkedIn, for example, often enough is something that is increasingly doubted from a value perspective, or from a delivery of value perspective. Because, I mean, just be frank, how often do we answer this type of follow-up questions? Probably not so often.
Not so often, yeah.
Not at all.
We're all busy people,
well, this is obviously something that doesn't help me, but them, yet costs me. So in how far do you see a chance in embedding the gathering of this satisfaction data into the very conversation, into the very support conversation immediately, without causing too much friction?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. I don't have immediate answers, but
I think for them. But if there are immediate answers, we probably should patent them. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think ultimately it's kind of the more consistent you can be, with the level of service and what you can deliver. Concentrate on actually doing the best job you possibly can for that client is probably the strongest thing you can actually influence within that. If you make a personal connection and you've made a difference to that person, you increase the likelihood that there's reciprocity, is you've done something for me, and there's a natural human reaction to try and reciprocate against that.
Let me be devil's advocate here. One of my favorite roles. Now I'm in a service call because something unexpected happened. And this happened after I potentially spent a heck of a lot of money to have something working. Now I'm wasting even more time, time, well, the only asset that I have that I won't get back in a service call that probably makes me disgruntled right away. Well, which makes me disgruntled right away because I'm in this very call. So what chances do have service organizations to repair that at all? I mean, you basically said giving back something. No, you're repairing something because it's a service interaction. Something broke. Something is not working as I expected it. So how to get to changing my mind to, hey, I got something back?
Well, I think a lot of it's to do with human relationships. I think this is fairly established territory. I don't think there's anything sort of new in here, which is that who are suffering the consequences of this issue, first of all, need to be heard and understood. That's the first in any human interaction. That's the first. If there's a problem, then you're not going to get very far if you don't think you've been heard or understood, through that process. And so, there is that empathy aspect to it, but it is making sure that you kind of understand that problem. And if you can do that quickly, then you are heading in the right direction. I think customer support people are really at the sharp end in here, because they're having to deal with somebody else's mess. They haven't caused it. I mean, there's a classic challenge with things like CSAT and other kind of measures. What are you measuring? are you measuring the anger at the overall experience?
Mhm.
Or are you trying to actually find out whether you had a better, support experience? With lousy product experience, but I've had fantastic support experience. And you sometimes see the wording is trying to be very, very explicit. Was, how was your support agent today? Right. That might not be the top of, to your point, the top of mind for you having a bad experience. Yeah. And that might actually antagonize it, that kind of situation. And maybe you need to be able to say, what is the sort of question? What is the right question I should be asking at this particular point?
I being me, the disgruntled customer.
Yeah. Well, no. What is the system's response to that at the moment? We've done some work before about trying to correlate going out and asking for kind of NPS services whilst there's some, storm going on. Yeah. Not the right time to ask for that kind of score, Yeah. But it's along those principles. If don't antagonize the situation, because you have some sort of process that says, I just want to know how I did in this bit of it. That can be really good and appropriate when it's something like I've asked a question and I've got the answer I want. But if you've got an issue with the actual overall service that's being done or the overall product, that's what's top of your mind, not whether you're being asked to comment on a facet of the experience.
Okay, so what you said earlier is that some of your customers are targeting, let's say, empathetic work, and are having their agents to build up a relationship with their temporary client, means the customer who has the immediate need. In contrast to the other ones who are more transactionally oriented, get over with this this service incident. What are they measuring in their service centers?
Well, I mean, they're measuring, how long the agent handling time, is a classic in the industry. Is how much time has an agent spent resolving that issue, and if AHT is longer for some agents, then scrutiny can be applied to that agent that they are not doing a very good job. You have to then say back is, what is management not doing a very good job supporting that agent? Are they getting the right training? Are they getting the right support around that? So AHT it can be a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and those who are, I mean, if you are going into a scenario where you actively engage with the customer, it naturally takes longer. So what are they then measuring as a successful interaction in contrast to the other ones?
Well, CSAT, in terms of, how satisfied, are you, with the resolution.
Okay, so they're focusing more on satisfaction than in purely transactional metrics.
I think it varies with organizations about how much volume, that they have to kind of process.
Okay.
You can find in some industries, government might be a good example, where actually there's very low expectations of service, low, morale in doing this, and it's first in, first out. And if it's going to take that time, it's going to hit that time. I turn up for my 8-hour shift, and I do my best ish.
Okay.
But other organizations, it's so ingrained in their business model, they just cannot afford. It's the most important part of their business is the whole customer experience. They're highly competitive. The customers have got lots of choices. There's no loyalty. They've got to do a good job all the time. So there's a real spectrum there.
Okay, cool. This hour flew by. It really flew by. We are usually closing down with famous last words. Famous last words, not because we want to terminate our guest, but well, there needs to be a termination of the session.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what will the customer service center of the future look like? So looking ahead 5 years, how will the customer service center look like as opposed to now? What are the main differences?
I think you will see a greater penetration of AI. I don't think it's going to get to that 80% type of level. I think it will be more average around about 50%. I think there'll be hopefully a lot more concentration on building trust. Really using that asset of a human in order to do that. And hopefully they'll use the savings to reinvest into systems. There's a I can't remember it now. It used to be called, is it KCS, Knowledge Center Systems, which is the ability to take issues and then go away and solve those problems, whether it be documentation or whether it be back in the product. So you actually aren't just answering the same questions all the time and getting very good at answering the same questions all the time and very efficient at doing it, but actually feed that back in to the bigger system to fix things. So that's kind of my hope, is that you actually do CX.
Okay.
And AI is a tool. It can be a very good tool, but it is not the panacea fix for everything.
Okay. That was a good answer.
Okay.
Thanks. Well, not that you gave any bad ones so far.
Pleasure.
Thanks for your time and your insight. This was great. We had a couple of viewers actually, which still didn't leave us. So, although they have been quiet, which is great as well. Well, then them being quiet, not so, but thanks again. And well,
Is there any follow-up questions? Then I'd be happy to.
We will. Yeah, we probably will. And for the next time, for our audience next time, so tune in again. When it comes to a different topic, we are talking to our guest Noriko Yokoi, who will talk with us, speak to us, discuss with us about the impact of AI on advertising. Meaning the totally different end of the process chains. Not the result of bad marketing and sales resulting in customer service, but how to get it good and how to get it great.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
thanks.
Till next
Tuesday. Well, have a great evening, Dave.
Yeah, see you soon.
And see you back.
Backstage.